Hello, everybody. My name is Dawson from StraightA, because that's the channel we're uploading all these videos to. No, the guys, I haven't told them that yet, but StraightA. Welcome to StraightA, and here we are with our NFL Week 1 Power Rankings. So how this series is going to kind of work, and the three guys are kind of unknowing to this as well right now, is that every week I'm going to make my own power rankings of the NFL teams for the season so far. A couple criteria, I'll probably put them on screen that kind of used to make this initial power rankings as well as initially going forward. So I used the last season as a really heavy basis. Like that was heavily weighted in how I ranked these teams at first. So where they kind of placed, whether they made the playoffs, stuff like that, they're going to be ranked higher even if they felt like they got worse on the offseason. Then from there, from wherever they kind of fell and ranked, I kind of moved them up and down, and then in the end, I kind of just made a couple shuffles. But for the most part, the heavy criteria I used was last year's ending standings, and just kind of moved them around from there, from based on their off-season moves and their draft, and as well as how they looked in the preseason, stuff like that. So kind of use a little bit of everything, but is heavily weighted from last year's, as well as a couple of little biased things for me, whether I moved a team up or down. But just kind of keep that in mind when I'm about to show you all these rankings, because they're kind of wild when you kind of look at them from a perspective of who's actually going to do the best this season. We'll adjust them as the weeks go on, how people play, and I'll keep track of the stats and all that. But kind of let's go back around the table and kind of say who we all are. But again, my name is Dawson.
Ryan.
Rhythm.
And I'm Ben.
Yes, and Ben, of course, is joining us for the first time. Of course, everybody, if you watched the previous preseason predictions, we had him just had a little graphic, but instead now he's actually joining us here today. You know, very very upset at us for starting it so early, but you know what? The grind don't stop.
Get some coffee and suck it up.
Amen to that one. All right, I'm about to share the power rankings. We'll go one by one, kind of talking about them, and we'll get the kind of initial reactions. Boom, go live. So I'll edit out the other stuff. But so, any initial thoughts on seeing the current rankings of where teams are? Anything that stands out to you immediately?
The Patriots being over the Jets.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to. That's the top 10.
Still trying to figure this out because it took me at least 10 seconds to be able to actually see the power rankings for once.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely last season's standings really help out a lot there in terms of boosting up some of these teams that placed better last year than this year. Ben, you got it situated there where you can see it, or?
Yeah, I can see it. I think definitely the most interesting thing to me, it would be the first thing that stands out would be the Titans at 25. That's an interesting one. As a preseason look, going as a bottom 7 team would be not my forte for this team. People tend to forget that they started 7-3 last year, and they went on a terrible downhill run, finished the season 0-7. But people like to say that there's a lack of talent on this team. I don't know where that narrative comes from, considering they started out the season, and the reason they ended the season that way was due to locker room chemistry because their coach decided to go get a DUI after a really good calling of a game, and I just don't know that I would put them quite that low to start out. If they perform badly in week 1, I could see that, but maybe not for preseason.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of a really interesting to note too that the Titans are actually still second in their division, but they are in the bottom 8. And that's just because the South teams, NFC and AFC South teams, finished so poorly and didn't do very well in the overall season. You're right, the Titans did start off pretty strong, but I mean, by the end of it, they were ended up being, just falling off a cliff near the end of that. Either way, we'll tackle this one by one. We'll start from 32 all the way down to 1. We'll kind of take it sector by sector. Cardinals, I think it's no question. They did bad last season. They only got worse in the offseason. They're only going to get worse for the next probably year or two until they get better. And the Colts being at 31, again, they were really bad this last season. I didn't see any major improvements. I saw a lot of wild cards get added. They could do better than 31, but right now I don't see them doing much better than the bottom like 4 or 5 teams for at least their first season. Kind of the same for Houston Texans. A lot of young players there, but a lot of unknowns. They're really bad last season. Maybe we'll improve a little bit, but the rankings definitely shouldn't show it for the beginning with so many wild cards. And then the Bears at 29. Justin Fields feels like he's going to make a step up, especially with his weapons getting a whole lot more improved and the defense of the Bears doing a little bit better. But I didn't see it as a significant enough improvement to move him over the next like 4 teams. I feel like the Bears will still kind of have maybe an early rough start, and then maybe glide out from there. Any kind of thoughts on those 4 teams in particular?
No, not those 4. Not those 4.
Fair. Everybody kind of feel good about those 4 there.
There might be one team that's a little higher up that I think might deserve a spot in those 4, but
yeah. Bet. Okay. Move on to 28 through 25 then. Of course, the Raiders at 28. I don't know. They're a mess over there, and I feel like they're just in a slightly upper echelon than the bottom 4 teams. They're definitely, I think, bottom 5. The Rams and Raiders actually were pretty tough, whether I was going to put them, and Rams actually were probably the toughest team in the right column to kind of place exactly. I do think they're going to do fine. I don't think they're going to do awful, as in like tanking, but they're going to be in the bottom echelon of the teams. And so I gave them a little edge over the Raiders just because I think the Raiders don't have anything except for Devontae Adams there. Well, I think the Rams, as long as Cooper Kupp can stay healthy for most of the season, which already is a big ask for early in the season. And then Aaron Donald, we'll see what he does, whether his age is finally catching up to him. And the coaching staff, I think, with the Rams are still strong. We'll see. And Matthew Stafford's still a big unknown, but we'll see how he really does. Broncos at 26. Again, it's a lot of improvements seemingly, but already early in the season, they already have so many injuries. Like their receiving core has so many injuries. There's like 3 or 4 healthy receivers going to week 1. And Sean Payton sure is going to make improvements, but there's no way with the current outlook of the team they deserve anything below or above the top 8. And Titans at 25, that one was also kind of tough because I think of the teams, if you look in the third column, kind of look ahead a little bit, and even the second column, there's a lot of good teams there. And the Titans, I just feel like with DeAndre Hopkins, feels like they could be in that second and third column eventually. It's just that right now I see those teams in the middle having more potential and more upside than the Titans early on. Now, they're in a weaker division, so their record probably will show a little bit better than where their placement is, but that's where I ended up putting them. Any thoughts from y'all?
I think the Broncos being that low is a big problem because, like you said, they brought in Sean Payton. Although they have a lot of injuries in their wide receiver core, their defense is still standout. And I think putting them in maybe the third column, like low third column, would be more accurate.
You are also talking about arguably the worst offense of the entire NFL last year.
Yeah, but I think Russell Wilson's finally settled in. Like, even if you look at the end of the season last year, he started, producing what he was expected to produce. And I think this season will be a big difference. I think we'll see a huge leap from last season to this season.
I mean, you could look at it that way, but based off of how they've played and how they haven't really improved their offensive roster at all, and it's only gotten worse this offseason due to injury, I don't see them being able to go up any higher. I don't think they have any willpower to score more than 15 points a game on an average defense.
That's fair. That's very valid points. And I think that's why they have them so low. They're injury ridden. They were injury ridden last year. I think they were the most injured team last year, if I remember correctly. And their defense, while I agree with you, Tracy, is still superb, and I think it's still going to do well. The defense technically only got worse on paper because I think we lost a couple players on the offseason. Not like important star players or anything, but it just our depth is hurting, and we didn't have much draft capital this year, so it only got kind of worse. Ben, you said that there's a possible team that you could see go in the bottom four. Is one of these teams the team that you feel like?
Oh no, oh no,
Oh,
they're higher than this.
gotcha. Okay, interesting. All right, Ryan, what about you? What's your kind of thoughts so far?
I already gave my thought. Patriots should not be that high.
We're working our way to them.
No. They have Mac Jones and Matt Corral. Those are their quarterbacks this year.
Hey, you know,
Unless Bill O'Brien juices Mac Jones up somehow, they're going to finish around that 29 to 30-second mark.
good gosh, that feels like a big ask for the Patriots to go down that low. To be honest with you.
Really?
Fair, okay. Oh, we'll keep on trucking along to 24 through 21. This is like the NFC South edition of the part of the segment here. Again, all these teams have in common is they have at least one or two big unknowns on their team. I think why the Saints ended up being 21 over all the teams below them, including the very right column, is just that I feel like there's just a solid team. They're an older team, but they're just a solid team. They have the most they feel like they're not going to waver that much. They feel like they're very stable. There's not like a big question mark at anywhere except for maybe Derek Carr, but I feel like Derek Carr is just always proved that he's a solid quarterback. I don't think he's going to show that he's more than a solid quarterback. I don't think he's going to show that he's less than a solid quarterback. The secondary for Saints, again, aging, but are still very good. And they don't have an unknown quarterback like the other 22, 23, and 24. I really wanted to put the Browns above. If you saw the preseason predictions, the Browns, I'm really high on the Browns. I think they have an overall great roster. Deshaun Watson holds me back from that. But they all kind of can trickle around. 22 through 24, I feel like can kind of move around in any way. I like the upside of Bryce Young. And I feel like the Falcons have another year before they really reach the more upper echelon of performing in the season. Yeah, any thoughts on any of those four teams? Feel pretty good. Just kind of a bunch of unknowns. Okay.
Yeah, they're.
All right. We'll move on to 20 through 17. Of course, hosting your New England Patriots there, Ryan. 20, I have the Jets. 20, I have the Jets, and 18, I have the Patriots. Those two are probably the most significant of the ones there of like, why the hell are they there? The Jets, they have and the reason why I decided to keep them as low as I have instead of putting them into like possibly the second column or at least the top of the third is they technically haven't proven anything. And I think I learned my lesson from the Broncos last year that the team looks really good. The team looks really promising and more promising than the Broncos did last year. 100% admit that. But they haven't proved anything yet. Aaron Rodgers hasn't proved that he can consistently work in that offense. The secondary proves that it's really dang solid, especially with Sauce Gardner over there. The defensive line is still holding up pretty well. The Jets' defense overall is really strong, but the offense is really revolving around Aaron Rodgers, and their record last year kind of showed they're in this kind of area, and so I decided that there wasn't really much reason to remove them. Of course, it's always going to be good having a elite quarterback like Aaron Rodgers until a Russell Wilson situation happens. And I noted that I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be that situation, or nearly as bad at least, because I think there's a competent coaching core. But for them, I want them to prove it for me. I don't want to move them up too far ahead and kind of overshoot them. Patriots at 18, again, they're kind of like the Steelers for me. And the Steelers at 16 we'll get to in a minute. But they're a solid team that I feel like are always going to be in that kind of middle-ish range. Now, I do think they're going to kind of drop off a little bit, but I don't think they're going to that third column, I'll be honest with you. I think they'll maybe bottom out at like 23, 24. Maybe at 25 at one point. But 23, 24, bottom third column is where I feel like the defense of that Patriots can take them. The offense is just solid. Mac Jones is going to get his 35, 36, 3,700 yards and 23 touchdowns, like 10 picks, 11 picks, whatever. The offense is going to do fine. The defense is solid. And as long as they stay healthy, which usually in the Patriots they do pretty well in doing that, staying safe, they're going to be fine. 17, Jordan Love. And Jordan Love's the only question mark for me at Green Bay. Green Bay is overall a solid team. I really have no hate to them. They did good last season, kind of dropped off near the end. but I think Green Bay deserves that 17 spot. And then Commanders, I think people really kind of forget how good the Commanders actually looked last season. Very similar to the Titans. They had a really good start to the season, first half of the season, and then just did not do anything near the end and made no moves at all. But they still have a solid team overall. Like they're not wowing anybody, but I don't think they're a depression team yet. But that kind of concludes the bottom half. Any kind of thoughts there from y'all?
Packers should be lower.
Oh, go ahead.
What did he say should be lower?
Who should be lower?
Packers.
Packers.
Packers at number 17. They got Jordan Love. I don't like Jordan Love at quarterback. I don't think he's proven enough yet to reward a 17 spot as a team. But he could prove me wrong. I said Patriots should be at bottom 3 because they suck. And that.
You know what this Jets team and the 2022 Broncos have in common?
What do they have in common?
Nathaniel Hackett. Can he hack it this time? Probably not.
Well, he has a much less important role in New York.
According to Sean Payton, they're going to go into the ground anyway.
If Sean Payton was making this list, the Jets actually be at 30.
They'd be at 32. He does not like the Jets.
Honestly, with this list, I think the Jets are going to improve more than anybody else as far as like position on the power rankings. I honestly think they'll be in the top 8 by the end of the season.
Interesting. Okay.
I could definitely agree to that to an extent. I don't know about top 8. I definitely see them climbing for sure.
What about y'all's thoughts on the Commanders? I know, like, a lot, preseason predictions, we talked about their name and about how they can go back to the Redskins, but we really didn't talk about them as a team very much. And so I feel like, do y'all have any strong thoughts about them at all?
Their offensive production is just too weak for them to really move above average. They don't have an above average backfield. They sure don't have an above average QB. And their receivers are Terry McLaurin and
Yes.
that's their headline of their offense right there is Terry.
I agree. I think everything hinges on Sam Howell, depending on how he comes out and proves himself. And I don't think that's going to be good. And as we saw last year with the Broncos, a super strong defense can only get you so far.
Very true, very true. All right, then we'll move into our top half of the teams, the fun teams. We can kind of talk about it a little bit more because I think we can get really nitpicky with especially the very left column, but even in some sense the second column. 16 through 13, I have the Steelers, the Lions, the Bucks, and the Dolphins. Already, I know the most controversial and the one that I think is going to change the most at 14 is the Bucks. I know everybody, like them being that high. Here's how I kind of looked at it. They still won the division. They lost Tom Brady, yes, but they did make the playoffs. And so, and this is the kind of mindset I really was debating on. I was like, I'm either going to drop the Bucks down all the way to the third column when they were technically like a 14th ranked team last year, which is completely justified. I think I'd be completely justified in doing that. But I think keeping them in that 14 spot, the worst playoff team, I think is fine for now. Because I think they had enough. They made it last year. I mean, that's simple to the point. They probably won't make it again this year, in my opinion. But I think they still deserve that 14th spot. I really debated on moving them like all the way down to 22. I really did. But let's see them do bad. Because Baker Mayfield, he could surprise us. And granted, he's no Tom Brady. And again, another aging team, another bad coaching staff could prevent all this and come crashing down. But I'd rather let them prove it to me than me just make an assumption and all of a sudden realize, oh crap, they might be a top 10 team. Who knows? But so that's probably the most debatable one for me. But I still feel strongly that they deserve that 14th spot, at least for now, and we'll see how they go from there. Lions at 15 kind of surprised me too. Again, I kind of kept them out of that playoff area for now because there's a lot of teams that above them perform better. Say what you will about the Vikings, but they did do really have a really great record, even though their games were only won by like one score in like half their games basically. but the Lions still have to prove a little bit more and kind of get into that upper echelon. I think they improved a lot on the offseason to the point where I think they could really rise up early in the rankings. The Steelers being at 16, again, I'm always on the train of the Steelers going to be a 16, 17, 18 power rank team in the beginning and end of the season. They may rank down 22 or 23, somewhere in the middle, but they're going to finish 9-8 at the very least. They're always going to be a solid team. And the Dolphins are probably going to be the most, again, from my preseason predictions, they're the team with the lowest floor and the highest ceiling. They could easily be number 3 on this list by the end of the season, but they could also easily be number 23, 24 on this list for me. So 13 felt like a good middle ground. They made the playoffs last year. They didn't look good near the end of the season, but that's because of injuries. And we'll see how they go from there. Any thoughts on 13 through 16?
I think out of this whole list, the Bucks are going to be the team that drops the most. I think they're going to end up in the bottom 4, honestly. I don't think they're good. Injuries to their aging wide receivers and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Their defense is good but aging, and Baker Mayfield at quarterback can only carry you so far.
I like how he tried to sneak that little Bucks pick right there, right past everybody, like we weren't going to notice that. You were insinuating that is a playoff team by putting them there.
Yeah.
They are nothing close to that.
Baker Mayfield is
might
not
be-
Tom
that
Brady.
might be the worst offense in the league this year. That might be it.
Baker Mayfield is not Tom Brady. Tom Brady, with those receivers, could do something. It's Baker Mayfield.
Whoa.
Like- Baker Mayfield is not Tom Brady. I'm not saying he's bad, but he's not Tom Brady.
The way
You could
he
put
said
pretty much
those
you
receivers-
could put the local bagger from Walmart, the guy who pumps gas, and some homeless man at wide receiver. Tom Brady will make him something work. It's Baker Mayfield. Drop him down to that 4th row, bump everyone else up a few, then I'll settle.
The more questionable thing that I heard you say was they still have people that pump gas for you at local gas stations where you're at.
In Martin, Tennessee, if you're nice to the people, they'll come pump your gas.
I'll try that next time.
I've had it happen 2 or 3 times around here. Where there'll be someone from inside that comes out at one of those small mom and pop shops, and they're like, "You want me to pump your gas for you?" I'm like, "Sure." I'll just sit in my car.
Okay. Anyways,
So obviously you hate my Bucks pick. I'm still going to die on the hill that they deserve. They deserve the spot until otherwise shown. But what about the other 3? How do y'all feel? I know where Trathan is on the Dolphins. That should be number 1 on this list for him. But
No, I made my own list, and I have the Dolphins at 5th. So not number 1, but I think the Dolphins are going to be a fantastic team this year.
overall, I think this is all pretty fair. It's okay as far as the range. The Steelers are probably in that range. They're probably going to go 9-7 again, or 9-8 now, 17-game season, or 8-9. The middle of the road, not very good. Lions, I would like to see them a little higher, but this is not just an atrocity for them. Same for the Dolphins. I think it's fair to put these teams where they're at.
Pretty solid besides those Buccaneers. It's
That's
the only big I see in that.
fair.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. You shot yourself in the foot right there.
Hey, listen, if
You're
really,
dying high on that hill.
if you really think about it, honestly, and
You
you know
didn't
what, this is
even
me
make it
playing
up to
devil's
the
advocate a
elevator.
little bit. This is me playing devil's advocate a little bit, but go ahead.
Ben just made a great point. You didn't even make it to the top of the hill before dying. You're like halfway up.
Hey, no, everybody's 0-0 right now. Right now, my list is perfect according to the standings in the NFL.
So true. You know what? Yeah, you're right.
Logic, you could
Hey,
put
let's
the
move that.
Cardinals
Let's
at
move that
number one
Cardinals
because
pick
they're
all the way to
all
number 1
0-0.
because they're 0-0 right now. No, that's not how this works.
What were you saying, Ben?
That's what I was saying right there. You could put the Cardinals at number 1, all 0-0.
You know, I
Ready for
considered it.
I'm ready for fantasy talk. That is what I've been summoned for. I'm the fantasy expert of the group.
That's true. You are. We'll get rocking and rolling, but I'm gonna make my devil's advocate. Trayton. Trayton's like, no, actually, I am.
Move the Bucks back about 18 spots and you'll be okay.
Just 18 casually. Minus 18 next week. Instead of that equal sign, you see minus 18.
That would be nice. Anyways, okay. So 12 through 9 we have now.
Yes. 12 through 9. So Chargers, Seahawks, Vikings, Ravens. So these are now the top 10 teams. We're getting to the top 10 teams, including like some honorable mentions. Chargers. I'm sorry, when you perform that badly at the very end of your season, and you didn't change any of your coaching staff, you may have the best roster in the league, but you don't deserve that top 10. That's the conclusion I made with the Chargers. They deserve to be put right there, right outside the top 10, but they do not deserve top 10 yet. Seahawks, kind of the same thing. I feel like they're just an overall above average team, a team that's gonna be in that 8 through 12 range. I think Geno Smith, as long as he does well again, can easily keep the team near that top 10 contention. The Vikings. Listen, when you have Justin Jefferson there and Kirk Cousins, who's a competent quarterback, their offense is going to score the points. It's just going to be a question of whether the defense and offensive line can really hold up with the rest of the team, which are just overall solid. The Vikings just have an overall solid team. I don't know. There's not really much for me to say about the Vikings except that they did well last season. They didn't change much over the offseason in terms of overall bigger bad drops, or bigger low drops or whatever. And then the Ravens at 9. I really wanted to put the Ravens out of the top 10. I really did. I'm not high on the Ravens this year. I know a lot of people are. Lamar Jackson's going to come back and do fine. The receiving core's better, but I don't see them being a top 10 team. They may score a wild card spot for me, but at that point I'm just kind of they're 9 just because I feel like that's where being fair to the power rankings, I feel like that's where they rank. So any thoughts on 9 through 12?
So I made my own power rankings list, and we actually were very similar here. I have 3 of those teams in the 9 to 12 mark, and so I think that's pretty accurate.
I think it's not a bad start. I think the Chargers put there with the expectation to go up. Seahawks will probably stay around that range all year, I think. I'm not as high on the Vikings. I think would personally switch them in Detroit. Just go ahead and flip them. It's just something about Kirk Cousins where he's a good quarterback, but he just doesn't seem to perform to the highest of his potential. And it just never happens. I don't know if it ever will. And then Ravens at 9 is a little scary. It's a good powerhouse defense with John Harbaugh at the reins. Lamar's coming off an injury, though. It's been 2 or 3 seasons he's been like this now where he's very risky, very injury risk, doesn't play more than 10 games, it seems. And it's been like this ever since the MVP season, essentially. I don't know that I see them as a playoff team.
Interesting.
My
okay.
only big question is the Seahawks. What do you see in the Seahawks?
Besides the fact they made the playoffs last year, and they
besides that fact, what do you see?
Oh, I think we're gonna have a special guest.
a special guest, nice. I see that they have a solid quarterback in Geno Smith who proved himself last year, and there's no reason to doubt him this year. They have a good receiving core, decent backfield.
There's my question right there. When does their good receiving core get off the IR and off the suspension list? Because right now they are down to 3, maybe 4 in week 1 wide receivers.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
You can hit DK Metcalf. You can hit Tyler Lockett. I don't even know who Jake Bobo is. Who is Jake Bobo and why is he number 3?
They did get Jackson Smith and Jigba, didn't they?
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
I missed that line. They do. Jackson Smith and Jigma may also not be there in week 1. Out of their entire receiving core, they have DK, Tyler Lockett, Jake Bobo, and that's it. That is not either on the injured reserve, questionable, or suspended for week 1.
Yeah,
I
as far
mean-
as my, all right, good.
No, I mean, once a few of those guys get healthier, and I know they're gonna make it somewhere, I mean, I'll give it to them. But right now, I would have them not dropping far. I mean, maybe like the 13, 14 spot. Like, I still think they're a playoff team. I just don't think with the injury question marks to me right now, I'd have them up that high.
Yeah, when I'm in my own power rankings, I have them at 16. Geno Smith last year, he really was a crazy season for a player that hadn't played much. But I don't think he can recreate that. And so, I mean, they brought in Jackson Smith and the Jigba. They already had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, so their wide receiver core is fantastic. When they're not injured. But I don't see them being a playoff team this year. So I think they'll drop maybe 5 or 6 positions by the end of the year.
Dang. What do you think, Ben? What are your comments about the Seahawks?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was kind of making sure the dog was situated on the couch before.
Pretty reasonable. Pretty reasonable.
Yeah, she's also not high on the Seahawks at all. I think that the Seahawks will probably keep it up. I think they'll probably stay. I think they could. There was a team that I would say would mirror their 2022 season. I would say the Seahawks have the best chance to do that because they made their offense a little bit better for that scheme. Pete Carroll's still there. Pete Carroll is Pete Carroll. Let's just be honest. And I don't see a regression in Geno. And their front seven has seemed to hold up and be a stronger part of that defense. So I don't see any problem with keeping them there. I think they could stay in that spot right there all year.
If you want some more specifics, I pulled up their stats. Pulled up some of the stats from last year for the Seahawks. They're pretty much dead middle for almost everything defensive wise. Like sacks, they were somewhere in the middle. Interceptions, they were somewhere in the middle. Rushing yards allowed and passing yards allowed, they were somewhere in the middle. With offense, they actually were one of the higher, I think, not quite top 10, but I think 11 or 12 for rushing yards. So I remember their O-line being pretty solid last year with not even allowing many sacks. I didn't get that stat up, but I think last year they just had a great core of the team where you didn't have to necessarily have a DK Metcalf going off every week or having their defense grabbing a turnover every other play. I think they're just a solid team who, when you play solid throughout the whole season, I think that's a really important note here. So I think the Seahawks are going to be a team that plays solid throughout the whole season. I see like the teams like the Chargers, the Dolphins, the Jets, the Cowboys. I see teams like that who play good or bad. But the Seahawks, I don't see that very often, if that makes sense. They just play solid throughout the season. If you play solid throughout the season, you're going to catch teams on their bad week. And I think that's where you kind of have them knocking on the top 10. Even with their injury reserve, yeah, it's going to be rough for them. I'm not going to lie to you. That's something I probably should have taken more into account too. Kind of looking at their depth chart, you're right. But I think even then, as long as they make it past the first few weeks, I think they still deserve that 11th spot. I would definitely put them over the chart. I put them above every team on this list so far. I'd say you have an easier time arguing going up than down for me. All right. Any other comments? I like comments for 9 through 12. I liked it.
I'm looking at the one that's right above 9 through 12 and wondering how they have managed to sneak in.
Talking about the Giants?
What? Yes.
My rant's
know.
coming in this 5 through 8.
I like the Giants there.
No.
I got them at 9. I have them finishing second in the NFC East. I think they'll make the playoffs this year. I think they'll be a good team.
So who are they going to beat? The Cowboys or the Eagles?
I think the Cowboys. I don't think the Cowboys stand up to it.
My rant's coming here.
This
I went off,
maybe
2 days
drop
ago?
the Giants
Happened
18
again.
spots as well. Who knows?
Well,
Not that serious, but But definitely not keep them as a playoff team. I don't think they'll do it again.
No, that's fair. I think kind of starting with the 8 through 5, the Giants there's probably a team with one of the easiest schedules last year, and they showed it through the record, which that means they did what they were supposed to. They beat most of the teams they were supposed to. They lost the games we thought they would, for the most part. I don't know, the coaching staff really proved something last year, even though there was again an easier schedule. Again, I have them below the Cowboys and Eagles still, because the division's just freaking hard over there for the Giants to even consider going up too much. But at the same time, I'm looking at the team, and I don't have as many question marks as I do for teams like the Ravens, the Seahawks, the Bucks, the Saints, the Panthers, Lions. I just feel like they're solid. They're fine. Danny Dimes honestly kind of proved me wrong. I was a Danny Dimes hater, and I'm not saying I'm a lover now, but like he showed that he can be a competent quarterback, and he got paid for it. So we'll see if he keeps it up this season. Receiving core is nothing to really smile about, but they really didn't need it last season. Saquon, we'll see what he does and see if he's actually happy to be on that 1-year contract, and see how well he does, whether he keeps it up. I like him at 8, to be honest. I'm kind of like, you can maybe move him to 10. Like that's kind of like where I'm thinking. Like I can see an argument being made that maybe they deserve like a 10 spot, but like I don't think they deserve like third column, fourth column type talk at all. Especially with their overperformance last year. Everybody thought they were a 4-13 team last year. I remember looking back at some videos for that, and they weren't, not even close. So I think they earned that 8 spot. And again, I could see them be kind of a top 10 team rather than an 8 team, but I digress. Moving on, kind of quickly going over the other teams real quick, is Jaguars at 7. Honestly, they were the team I probably put my own personal bias in the most for, because I'm really high on Trevor Lawrence this year. I really, honestly, God, if I want to play some bets, it'd be on Trevor Lawrence having a breakout season. So I think the 7th spot for them having such an easy division, and for the high upside of that team this year with Calvin Ridley coming in and Christian Kirk still looking good. Like I think they're going to have a really high performing offense with a pretty solid D line. Secondary could be a little bit better, but still solid defense. Cowboys, they're always going to be in that top 8 talk. I'll be honest with you. I know we got some Cowboys haters. I'm going to defend them a little bit. Cowboys got a very, very good defense. Dak, I don't think is I think it's overhated. So I gotta give them my love a little bit. And then the Bills at 5, they are the worst of the top 5 teams. Top 5 is, I think, a whole nother tier on our own, but we'll get to that later. But Bills, I think they've just lost it. I think I lost it a little bit. I think that their year was 2 years ago, maybe even last year, but we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. But Bills are a solid
Third
team.
place in the AFC East.
I don't know about that one, but and he talks about the 5 through 8, and then we got a couple of rants coming.
Anyone else before I go off on my rant? No? Okay. The Cowboys do not deserve a top 8. I get they've made the playoffs 5 out of the last 10 seasons. Put them at that 13-14. They're not America's team anymore. They haven't been great since the 80s. What was it, 80s, 90s, whatever the hell. I wasn't alive when they won the Super Bowl. None of us were. I'm the oldest one here. Stick them in that 13-14. Sure, we can say they'll make the playoffs. And they're going to get blown out in the divisional round, just like they do every other year. They don't belong there. And I can just see it. If any Cowboys fan ever watches, they're going to, this is our year. No, it's not. Sit down, shut the fuck up, and just go back to sleep. You're not here yet. You're not here. Hate the Cowboys.
You're not that kid, pal. You're not that kid.
They're not. You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
That's guy. Shit. Messed that up.
I'm not that hard on the Cowboys, but I do have to agree. Cowboys are good on paper, but they never perform playoffs. Dak had trouble with the interceptions last year. I'm not sure if that's going to be a big problem this year. There's always Trey Lance as an option, which will never happen. But I see the Cowboys making the playoffs, but I don't like ever getting very far.
As far as rosters go, I definitely think they're deserving of that spot. They have one of the best defenses in the league. It's not even a doubt. Their skill positions on offense are above average. With Tony Pollard coming in, he's poised for a great season. CeeDee Lamb is good. Dalton Schultz is a good sleeper tight end. People haven't paid much attention to him, but he's done good in his young career. Um, Brandon Cooks is a seasoned vet to come in at wide receiver 2. I really don't see anything wrong with that set of skill position players. And aside from that, you've got a really strong offensive line headed by Zach Martin. I mean, this is one of the best rosters in the league. It's really on, can they finally put it together? They haven't been able to yet, but this is one of the best rosters for sure.
I completely agree. I think the Cowboys are a top talent team. It's just the coaching. The coaching's not great. And I think that screws them over every year. I think it screws them over in the playoffs. And it's kind of sad to see because, as you put, while they're not America's team anymore, you can't really hate the Cowboys. Like you said, great roster, phenomenal talent, but it's just the coaching.
I shouldn't say I hate the Cowboys. I hate Cowboys fans.
Okay, now I'll agree with that.
I hate Patriots fans recently too, because they want to be America's team. We were good in the 2000 to like 2010 mark. We were good 2010 to 2020. Now we're not good anymore. We're not America's team. 2020 to 2030, it's the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the dominant team right now. They have been for the past couple of years. The Cowboys had the 90s. Patriots had that 20-year stretch where they were decent enough. They won 6 Super Bowls. Now it's the Chiefs. They're America's team right now to me because they win consistently.
All right.
I mean, you need consistent winning in American football to be America's team. If you're not consistently winning, I don't care.
I mean, they do consistently win the regular season. I mean, when's the last time they had a
The
losing
regular
season?
season, the last time they won the Super Bowl was 95.
I think the last time the
Go
Chiefs had a losing season was 2012.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Chiefs are kind of the dominant force.
The last time the Cowboys missed the playoff was 2020. It was 3 years ago.
Fair point.
4 seasons ago.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they had a losing season there as well because Washington made the playoffs with a 7-9 record.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, that's a valid point. All right, you got me there.
So
You got me.
Drop that 6 down to like that 13, 14. Give them a wild card spot, and then put them to pasture the next week.
Well, honestly, if you think about it, that just shows you how much the Eagles have improved. And while we're not talking about the Eagles yet, to go from like 2020, where the highest team in the NFC East was 7-9 and made the playoffs, to now where I think they're probably the best division in the NFC. It's crazy how much that whole division turned around.
Things change quickly in the NFL, man.
All right. How about we hit 5 through 1? Because I think this is honestly the most interesting part of the whole.
Yeah. I'll quickly
rankings.
I'll quickly go through. I don't think I need to self-explain why these teams are here, but I'll kind of explain the ordering. Chiefs, Super Bowl winners. I mean, come on, self-explanatory. Eagles. I mean, they proved it. They made it to the playoffs. They beat the 49ers. Self-explanatory. Then you got the 49ers, Bengals, and Bills. Here's the reason why I put them in that order. 49ers. The only question mark I have is Brock Purdy, but I feel like Brock Purdy, or I feel like any QB can almost succeed in that system and be fine. Bengals. They got me nervous of Joe Burrow kind of getting hurt a little bit about a week ago or so. They got me a little bit nervous there. Their O-line's always a question mark. It's getting better. It's a question mark for me. Defense is fine, but it's definitely weaker than the 49ers. So I decided to put 49ers above the Bengals. You could debate that, but I'm still solid on 49ers being better than the Bengals. Bills, again, are dropping down for me. I feel like they're yours 2 years ago. I feel like they're solid there. It only feels like they're getting worse for me. So that's the reason I put them in order. Any thoughts?
I'm happy with the top 5.
Trace and Ben?
I think that. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think it's a pretty good top 5. I would probably flip 3 and 4. I think Brock Purdy's question mark is a little bit larger in this context, not that it's a large question mark, but I think it's too large for me to leave them over the Bengals because Joe Burrow will be fine, and the Bengals' offense is so studly that they consistently compete with the best of the best. Number one, I think they are 3 out of 4 with the Chiefs on their last 4 tries. I would have to put them at number 3, me personally.
I completely agree. That's what I was about to say. Um, like you said, I don't think the question with the question mark with Brock Purdy is that big. Considering their offense, I think you could uh, go back to what she said. I think you could take a gas station clerk and put him at quarterback, and he would still do well in that. Just with that offensive line and the weapons around him, Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuel. Uh, but I don't think they're better than the Bengals. I think the Bengals offense is phenomenal. I think their defense is solid, not great, not bad, but they're just right there in the middle. I think they're solid. So I do think the Bengals should be 3.
Fair point. Okay. So it looks like at least a top 5 in the NFL seems pretty solid for the most part. Switch around 3 and 4. I can agree. I can get down with that either way. I'm pretty still solid on 49ers being above them, but I think the Bengals. I wouldn't argue too hard with the Bengals being above them. But any other kind of final thoughts here? I think that's kind of that's it for my power rankings. We'll see how it changes throughout the weeks. I don't plan on being a big jumper or big downer. So just because a team loses or wins, depending on the loss, I'm not going to drop them like 5 spots just for losing a week. But we'll see how it changes throughout the season and kind of talk about it more. Any final thoughts?
Unless it's the Bucks because they shouldn't be there, right?
Who do they play week 1? I don't even know. Let's see.
They play the Vikings week 1 at Vikings.
Depending on their loss, who knows? But what if they win against the Vikings? Then they just go up.
I don't see that happening.
then the Vikings drop like at 14, and then the Bucks actually go above them. But yeah, that's my final thoughts. Anything else from y'all?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you all for watching and hearing our little thoughts and hot takes there. But please join us in the rest of the videos. Please leave a like and a comment down below, and we'll see you guys later. Peace.